touch a little on some observation research. So we're still in a primary research space. We've dealt with the ask area. Now I want to deal with the observation area. And really observation can deal with examination of artifacts and objects, all right, which we'll touch on. We can watch people secretly with a pair of binoculars, which we do some cases in homelessness projects, for example, I'm working on at the moment, in which the subject's unaware of the fact that they're being observed. Now they can be aware or unaware, depending upon which technique you use, right? And in the process, what we're trying to do is we're trying to look for mistakes or errors, because errors are a rich source of mismatch that exists between your human subject, their intention, and their action and the conditions around that. So there's a mismatch that's occurring there, and that results in what we refer to as an error. And the point of design is to see how can we reduce those errors. So there are different kinds of errors. For example, there's what's referred to as a slip, all right, which in other words, you intend to do one thing or one action, but you land up doing another, and that's referred to as an error of action. All right? So I meant to turn down this road, but in actual fact I missed it and I went another way. Okay, so that's what's referred to as a slip. And then you have a mistake, which is another type of error. So this means I had the wrong intention, I had the wrong goal, right, for example. And so because of that incorrect goal, a wrong action followed, right? And this is referred to as error of thought, right? So I strategically or tactically in my mind thought I'm going to go and do A, B, C, and I'm going to go and confront this individual because of their issues and all the rest of it, and caused me to get emotional and shout, and quite frankly that backfired, and we will reflect on that and say, well, that was a mistake going to see that person. Okay, so that's what we refer to as a mistake. So it's important that we want to try and identify what those types of errors are. Right. So, there's errors that get fixed. So, for example, leaving your cards at an ATM. There are techniques now available that can be used to fix those. Okay. Also, leaving petrol card on the roof of a car. You can see these are the types of errors that tend to occur. And what people have done is, they have fixed these errors in pretty ingenious ways, right, in order to complete the tasks. Now, these are the workarounds that people use, and it's those workarounds that we want to discover. Those are the secret sauce that sit in there that can help us actually make this person's life more effective. So in Six Sigma circles, it's called the hidden factory, because there's this constant rework that occurs in order to keep people or keep the system running. And in our everyday lives, we're doing the same thing. We're constantly doing these little error corrections along the way and fixing problems. So we're filling in the gaps. Now, that's the point. If we can find out what those are and we can solve those, then we've got a viable, desirable type of product, possibly feasible as well. Okay. So we also want to look for things like confusion and surprise that people have when they walk into a room and, oh, hold on, what's going on over here? Why are these people here? And why did that person click on that over there? Or I noticed that we sent out this product, and we noticed that a number of people were using it for something completely differently. All right. So normally when we're observing types of things, these are the things that we want to do, all right, when we're watching someone. So you're looking for that aha moment, that confusion and surprise as we're observing ourselves having that aha moment, and also an individual, you'll see they get the aha moment as they're like, oh, okay, this doesn't quite work. So this is the concept of observation, all right, and there's a couple of techniques, all right. So this is simple artifact analysis, all right. And this is really reflecting upon certain objects and their place in this world, and understanding things like ergonomics and their physical feel and their touch and how they impact or cause me to change my behavior in certain things. And this is what when we talk about observation, it can also be down at what is referred to as a second order design type stuff. Sometimes at the third order level, you've got fly on the wall observations, all right. So this means we're basically unobtrusively gathering information, all right, and we're just kind of sitting there and not being involved in the situation, but just really looking at what in actual fact is going on here, all right. and you're trying to look for the interaction, especially at a third order level, that might exist between people. So it's a people-to-people type of interaction that you would tend to use the fly on the wall for. By the way, you can also use the fly on the wall technique and the shadowing technique as an input into your research plan in order for you to understand more about those individuals and your personas and people and stakeholders that you're working with. So you don't necessarily have to use these techniques after the research plan. You can use them as inputs into your research plan. And shadowing is a very similar principle, and this is really where I'm actually following that individual through their day-to-day activities, and I'm asking questions along the way. Why did you do that? Why did you say that? Why did you use that object in that way? Why did you use that tone when speaking to that person? So this shadowing is the technique that it's not unobtrusively, we're now actually an active participant with those individuals. Once again, there's many tools in this space. I've just introduced you to a few of them. Same story here. You can use shadowing earlier on before the research plan to help you understand your stakeholders a little better. Okay. What you also want to do, by the way, is when you're doing fly on the wall and shadowing, you might want to also consider the impact of the Hawthorne effect on this, because remember that individuals will behave in different ways when you are shadowing them. So the fly on the wall sometimes is a little bit better because they don't know you're there. And I've done that in shadowing, not shadowing and observing, specifically being a fly on the wall, trying to figure out why people flick their cigarette butts onto the ground, why people smoke their cigarette and eat their lunch on the dustbin in the city, which is the most bizarre behavior, but this is how people do it. And really that was more of a shadowing exercise, and even although I did conduct some interviews, didn't quite get the response I was wanting, because people are naturally on the defensive. So in certain environments, you've got to figure out which of these tools are going to work and give you the correct insight. You can't just use them for any situation. So, sharpen your powers of observation. Have a look at this slide. What's wrong with it? Can you see anything missing in this picture? So naturally, there's this. Your brain tends to fill in certain gaps. Your powers of observation can be duped, and most of you will probably be looking at the number 85% or somewhere down in the alphabet. You probably started there and you thought, well, okay, is that the entire alphabet? Not recognizing that your top sentence has got a double the in it. Right, so these are the types of things that you need to start sharpening. All right, so 85% of you wouldn't have picked that up. All right, now the little story that came up from Stephen Covey in his book 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. And I try to find a video for this, but I'll just tell the story anyway here, and just so you can get an understanding of when you observe certain behavior, once again your biases can come into play. Once again, some assumptions can be pretty damaging. So basically the story goes that it's a Sunday morning in New York. Everyone's sitting on the underground quietly reading their newspapers, and along comes a man with his kids onto the subway car, the metro, and the children are loud and rambunctious and climbing over stuff and screaming and causing a general nuisance. The father sat down next to the individual, perhaps it was Stephen Covey, I'm not 100% sure of that, and his kids were running around and screaming all the time, upsetting people on the train, really disrupting them, and this man was doing absolutely nothing. So what is your initial response to this if you're observing this type of behavior? Most of us would have a very sort of knee-jerk reaction because we would tend to feel irritated, and we can't. How insensitive is this man that he's not controlling his children? We're just irritated, right? And that gives us an idea of our own sort of hearts in that situation. Now remember, the key to design is empathy. Right, so you need to practice the discipline of empathy. So when you're traveling on the train, when you're coming into work, when you're sitting in a traffic jam, practicing this discipline of empathy is key to everything that we're going to do through the design cycle. So in this case, was there empathy? This man finally felt irritated and wandered up to this man and said, "Hey, your children are disrupting everybody else. Do you mind getting them under control?" So apparently, what happened? The man lifted his gaze and sort of stumbled out of some deep thought, and he was like, "Oh, you're right. Oh, sorry, I guess I should do something about it. We just came from a hospital where their mother died an hour ago. I don't know what to do or think. My head's not in the right space." So that's one of those mortified moments. But that's an example that Stephen Covey used to just say, well, we can always have the wrong perceptions, and they can lead us to the wrong conclusions. So when you're observing, you need to consider these things. Same as story with this little girl with the apple. She's holding 2 apples, and her mom asks her to take a pick, or rather, can she have one of the apples? So the girl picked up one apple, looked at the other, and promptly took a bite out of the apple. Now, our natural response is, well, that's a bit rude. Why would she do that? It's a bit nasty to the mother. That doesn't make sense, right? So the mom's a little bit disappointed, but have a look at the daughter's response. This is the sweeter one. So our natural response is a negative one, like, oh, how could she do that? Her motives, we subscribe motivation to this person, whereas in actual fact their motives are quite different. And the point of empathy and design is that we don't subscribe motivations. We don't arrive with presuppositions. We try and put those things aside to understand the true nature of what motivates those people to perform certain actions. Alright, so I recommend that you go out and do a little bit of observation research. So if you're with a colleague, or you're going out to lunch, or wherever you might be going into work, take a notebook with you, and try and observe a certain behavior that's occurring on the train or in the traffic. Write it down into your notes, and compare notes when you get back to class. And I'll see you in the next module.